Good afternoon, my name is Christy Fraser and today I'm going to be giving a presentation for Unit NCS 3201 Professional Capacity Building. The presentation will approximately take between 10 to 15 minutes and there are 9 slides for the presentation. First of all, I'll go through what's going to be in the presentation. I will do identify what my dream job is, SWOT analysis, which is identifying my own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. I've only listed the top ones that I thought were appropriate. 5 goals that I have identified that I need to achieve to get to my dream job. Literature to support my 5 goals to get to my dream job, a quick conclusion, and then there's a page of referencing. So all up there's 9 slides. So what is my dream job? My dream job would to be a flight nurse for the Royal Flying Doctor Service. It's something that I have wanted to do for a very long time and I've always looked up to the Royal Flying Doctor Service. When I was younger we lived in a country town and we had a lot to do with them in our faiths, and they were always just a part of the community, and I've always respected the work that they did, not really understanding what it was they did back then, but now it's even greater. So I'm going to go through just a little bit about the organisation and then why I want to be a part of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. So first of all, the RFDS is one of the largest aeromedical services globally. They have a fleet of 63 aircrafts, which are mostly fixed-wing planes. They do have a few propeller-driven planes. They also have ambulance services, helicopters, and also some watercraft for when they need to get out on the water. They're a not-for-profit organisation, so they do heavily rely on donations from the public and funding from local government. The RFDS is as a whole an Australian company. However, they have national offices that do run individually. So in most states and territories, there is a base for the RFDS, and they govern themselves but under the main umbrella of the Royal Flying Doctor Service. So they're based in Western Australia, the Northern Territory, South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales and also Tasmania. They are a 24-hour service and they provide emergency care to our remote and rural communities and people living out there. Most of their emergency pickups are from, say, sheep stations or cattle stations, mine sites, holidayers that have struck trouble out in the wilderness of Australia. They also deliver primary health care to our remote areas of Australia, whether it be Aboriginal communities or just those small country towns when there's less than 100 people living there. They go there and they do diabetes clinics, eye clinics, hearing tests. There's a doctor there, so if people need anything they can see the doctor. Sometimes that's their local GP, is the Royal Flying Doctor Service. And they also run education within their organisation. So when you work for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, any upskilling or new practices that come out that you need to learn, they do them there. Also, as professional members of the healthcare setting, you can access some of their learning materials, which one will be discussed a little bit later when I get to the goals. But that's overall what the RFDS RFDS does. They do touch a lot of people around Australia. I mainly focused on the West Australia side of it because that's where I've grown up from. Why is the Royal Flying Doctor Service my dream job? I've always had the want to be in the front line and see all the gory stuff and the really exciting adrenaline pumping side of nursing that there is to offer. And I've also really enjoyed being able to do preventative care for people out there, and that's essentially what the Royal Flying Doctor is. So for me to be able to deliver primary health care and to help at diabetic clinics and do eye tests and hearing tests in children that live out in these areas is a really big thing for them, and I'd love to be a part of it. It also delivers life-saving treatment. I know firsthand, just over a year ago, my fiance was working away, come down with appendicitis, ended up he had a ruptured appendix and had to be airlifted out of where he was to the closest city hospital, which happened to be Tom Price. He was then airlifted back to Perth after that as well. So without the RFDS, he would have been in a lot worse situation than he is right now, where he's happy and healthy and back at work and life is going on as normal. The Royal Flying Doctor, to be a flight nurse with the Royal Flying Doctor, you need to have a dual role. So you need to have qualification as a registered nurse. You also need to be registered as a midwife, because that's the kind of things that you're going to be exposed to in the job. And I really like the idea of using both degrees simultaneously, and their customers are children, maternity or obstetric patients, critically ill patients, the elderly living in the outback, the Aboriginal remote communities, travellers that have gone to explore Australia. And I like the idea of getting just that vast difference in every situation that you go out to. Each day is going to be different. It's never going to be the same. Whether you're out there picking up a critically ill patient one day, the next day you're out doing a bit of education in the community or learning new skills for yourself. You get to fly as part of it, which I quite like the idea of. And I mean, your office is going to be either the outback or using high-tech equipment in an aeroplane. I think it's challenging and rewarding in the same time. And I get to be back in that part of the community from the country that I was a part of when I was a young kid, and you see all these people that they just band together and work together to make the community better, and I want to get back to being that, but still have my creature comforts of the city that I've gotten used to over the years. So that's why the RFDS is my dream job. It has everything in it. It's just such a good service that we have in Australia, to be able to look after other Australians and give them what they deserve and what they have worked so hard for. So I've done my SWOT analysis. Identifying on this slide is just my strengths and weaknesses. First I'm going to go through the strengths. These are quite hard to choose, and to say what strengths do I have and that I can offer. So I think that my biggest strength that came to mind straight away was the work that I've already chosen to do in my life, and that's working with children with disabilities and also working with the elderly in rehab. So for the past 10 years I've worked for children with special needs. It's involved a variety of experiences and learning curves and different things that I've gotten to do over the time. The biggest thing is letting these children be a part of society, where some people say no, but we say no, they are going to be and they should be allowed to, and me helping them integrate into society is just a good feeling. Also working as an enrolled nurse, I also think that this just gives me the backbone of good patient care, how to treat people, the basics of what nursing is, and I think if you've got the basics, all the other skills that you learn on top are just a bonus, even though they sometimes take precedence. I have a strong belief in helping the less abled. That comes from, I think when I was a kid, my mum's always worked with kids with disabilities, and being able to see how they just grow from being offered opportunities and not being stigmatised and not being kept back in society. I think it doesn't just have to be kids with disabilities, it could just be, a friend who socially can't cope with things, or, whether it's the elderly and they're this younger generation they just don't fit in with, or it's young kids where they feel like their spot's not quite right, or they're in that awkward phase. I like being able to help in those situations. I'm very determined to succeed and to achieve. I take pride in myself and my work, and I try to do everything to the best of my ability. I'm accepting of different people in society, so race, culture, sexuality, age, gender, it's not an issue. It's who's inside that I feel is the best, and I think that's how I carry myself. I am a passionate, strong-willed, and I like to be right, and I like to know the facts kind of person. I do like a good argument at times, but I think that fuels my want to learn and to have that knowledge that is necessary for being a nurse. It asks us to say when we felt most happy and fulfilled, and for me that's when I see my children smiling and my family happy, and when they make achievements that they might have thought that they couldn't do or weren't ever going to be able to get to do, and that's both my own children and the children that I work with. Just seeing them be able to open a lid or ride their bike without their training wheels, write their name for the first time, it's really a good thing to see, or be able to walk in their new walking frame. That just gives me a sense of inner happiness, and I feel fulfilled, like I'm doing the right thing. My most valuable contribution is making the lives of the families that I work with a little bit easier. So both the elderly and helping them understand that process and ways that they can work with dementia or their ailing disabilities, like taking a wheelchair out instead of them being able to walk 500 metres, or still being able to do the things that they want to do but finding places more accessible. And also the children with disabilities, strategies for their challenging behaviours and things like that. I think they are essentially my strengths that I hold, and I have a very, very good sense of work ethic also to go along with those. My weaknesses now are a lot easier to put on myself, so there's a few more there. Putting my family first with their needs and their wants above myself was the first one. Not having done my degree earlier in life is one that I've held on myself, that I wish I had done it earlier and I would have been in different positions than I am now. Not having to have worked in an acute hospital once I finished my EN, that was a decision made best for family, as working full-time and studying full-time, something was going to give, and my children didn't need to suffer my crazy neurotic self. Financial weaknesses, we don't really have, the usual bills that everybody gets, but we have our mortgages, children in school, after school sports, it's all costly, but we don't have anything that's kind of hanging over our heads to hold us back or cause stress or not be able to achieve the goals that I've set for myself. My partner works away, so he's away a lot, so I put a lot of pressure on myself to make things easier for everybody while he's away, which is something that I need to work on myself. Self-doubt is one that I have. Even though I may know that I can do it, I always doubt that I'm going to be able to do it. Not to a point where it stops me doing anything, but it's always lingering there. And while it was a strength, it's always a weakness, is having to know the answer and wanting to be right. Like I said before, I like a good debate, and I like to think that I use knowledge as my base of my debate. Sometimes I'm always right, and sometimes I need to admit that I'm not always right. So that was one of my weaknesses that I identified for myself. Opportunities. So opportunities that I've had and opportunities that I can foresee coming are that I have previous work and life history that others may not have had yet. So because I am a little bit older than some of the other graduates, that I might be able to shed light on some situations that they haven't experienced yet. I have had an interview for a graduate program with one of the hospitals, and if I'm successful, then there are more opportunities to apply later on in the year, which I hold as any opportunity like that as a good learning outcome. My current employers have offered me a position, so should I not get a graduate program, which I fingers crossed will, I always have the option of going back to them and just taking on the role as an RN. I am looking into doing some future studies, so I'm looking at doing my midwifery. Not for a little bit yet, but once I've finished my my RN degree, give myself a bit of working time, I'll look into it. And then I enjoy working with both children, adults and the elderly. I don't really mind where I'm doing my nursing, as long as I'm out there doing it, I think I'm going to be a happy chappy. My preference to my ideal working environment would be in the public sector, so that I still get to mingle with everybody from the community, and what your bank balance is has absolutely no influence on the care that you receive, whether you have private health insurance or you're as a public patient. In a public sector, you are going to receive the same care, the same resources, same amount of time and effort is going to be put into you. And there's not the stigma that, oh well, I'm a private patient. Everybody's equal in the public sector. And also opportunity for bit more family time once I finish studying. Once I go to work and I come home, I'll be able to put a little bit more into family time. Threats that I identified for myself in the future and that I pose on myself are that the dream job that I have wanted as a flight nurse with the Royal Flying Doctor Service, it's a very small, specialised area. There are certain skills that you need to have and qualifications that you need to have before you can get into it, so I have a bit of study ahead of me. Like I said, it requires me to complete further studies, both in a personal development kind of way and also in a higher education way as well. I wouldn't want to go into the RFDS not as a confident person within my own basic skills. Also, the impact that further studies and working for the RFDS might have on my family. They're all very supportive, but I know in the back of their mind they're wondering why is she putting herself through it again, but it's for the greater good. So working full time is also an obstacle that I will need to face. Being a student for the last 3 years, I haven't had to work full time, so getting over that hurdle will be a mighty one. Not having worked in a hospital is one that I've thought about myself, and that in hindsight, I kind of wish that I bit the bullet and took the job in the hospital. But then in saying that, I pointed out as a weakness that I wish I had done my degree earlier. So if I had done that, then something would have had to have waited, and that would have been my degree, and I wouldn't be where I am today. And my last threat is the stigma of being a new grad. I think you always just put a bit of extra pressure on yourself to do better than you think that you're doing, and that you should know more, when the reality is we're not really expected to know more as brand new grads. We learn along the way. So the goals that I identified for myself over the next 5 to 10 years, and I gave myself up to the 10 years, and I haven't put time increments on them because some are going to take a while, and some might not happen first try that I go, but I'm fully aware of that, and I know that that's why it could take me the 10 years. So the first one is to complete a graduate year in an acute hospital, and that's mainly to get my skill base where it needs to be, familiarise myself with the policies and procedures within the hospital setting, learn to utilise all the team members that are available to me, make connections, go to the education sessions that are offered by the hospital, and really make use of the year that I will have. Improve my knowledge about critical care practices and specific equipment use. Now that goal is one that I've set for myself for after my graduate year. Once I get a job, then I'm really going to look into improving and learning about emergency care, trauma care, ventilation, intensive care, so the sedation that they use, all the TPN that's used, why it's used, medications that are used, and how they're used differently in different settings. And that will just enhance on the basic knowledge that I'll have after my graduate year. And these things are available either through the hospital that you're working with. They do learning packages and upskilling. And so that's something that I'm going to look at doing, definitely. Once I've done that, then I move on to my third goal, which would be to gain employment in a critical care setting, whether it be ED, ICU, CCU, trauma centre, that sort of thing, and not particularly fussed on whether it's adults or paediatrics. I think you get just as much experience and knowledge from both. And in that one, that might take the longest time, I'm predicting, because those opportunities don't just knock on your door. You've got to actively seek them, and I've got to be able to prove that everything that I've learned and I know I can apply in theory, and I can deliver good care. And I've outlined all of these things in my personal development plans for each of the goals, which I'm not going to go into too much detail though because it gets a bit long-winded. Once I've worked in a critical care area, and I have the confidence in myself that I know that my assessment techniques are really good, and that I can perform in situations where I'm needed, I'll then go on and do my postgraduate studies to become a midwife. This I have researched, and what you can do is you can get a partnership with the hospital. So you're employed by the hospital, and you also take on your own self-directed learning through a university that's affiliated. Just depending down the track on what hospital I'm at and things like that as to what university that I would go to. And that is, I identified that's very specific learning for that area. And there's different skills that I'm going to need to use. So I'll have my basic skills and my knowledge of pathophysiology and anatomy and things, but midwifery is a whole different ballgame. So I'm going to have to learn a whole new different set of skills and build on the ones that I've already got. And to really do that, I really have to invest in knowing the basics and how to get the best out of my learning then. And then I'd like to work as a midwife for a while down the track. And then my fifth goal, which is the end goal really, for what I would like to do, is to enrol into the RFDS STAR program, which is specialised training in aeromedical retrieval. So it kind of goes along with the critical care practices in knowing your advanced life support and ventilation and emergency drugs. But it's done in a different setting because you're taking these people in an aeroplane, which is a whole different ball game again. So they offer a learning package to students that you can go in, do this. Once I've done that, then I think I'll feel confident within myself to apply for the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and eventually, hopefully, work as a flight nurse with the RFDS. Next, I've got my relevant literature. So most of mine I have coincided with my goals. So the first one is a journal article on how to apply for graduate programs and making the most out of the assets that you've got. The second one is guidelines for organising and preparing patients for transfer by air, which is a clinical guidelines book by the Royal Flying Doctor Service, and I think it might be the University of Western Australia. They've put together all of the skills that you need and how they're done and who does them and what roles are, and that's clearly detailed in that. They've also got a remote area nursing emergency guidelines, which gives you the knowledge of knowing more about different situations and how it's going to be different in a remote area as opposed to being in your big hospital with all of your services and equipment, and techniques to treat patients when you don't have all of that equipment. A journal article about a transition, like supporting nurses. It says graduate nurses, but it applies to all nurses. Then in moving on to remote area nursing and just the vast difference in it all. And also a critical care manual for clinical procedures and competencies. There's not a literature about the midwifery because the university that you go to, they're going to teach you what you need to know, and I'll be using their resources for that. That goal is just an essential competency and things that I need to get to my end goal, and so that's what I wanted to know the most about. Last is my conclusion. So to conclude, I'd just like to say that it is my goal to get to the Royal Flying Doctor Service, like I've said 100 times in the presentation. But to achieve these goals, I know that it's going to take determination and a lot of continual learning, which I'm really looking forward to doing, and just having that knowledge that other people might not have is exciting. So while I'm working as a registered nurse, I'm going to take every opportunity that I can to build myself up into the person and the nurse that I would want and need to be to get to my future goal. And I'm hoping along the way that I have a little bit of good luck and I can fall into some of these roles that I've chosen. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Once I've finished my studies, then I guess the journey will begin, and I really look forward to it. And next slide is just my references for my literature that I have chosen that I'm going to use for assignment 2, and it will all just kind of combine everything together. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a good year. Thanks, bye.